Hello, everyone, and welcome to UBS Trending. I'm Anthony Pastori. Sustainability is top of mind and continues to be one of the key investment ideas for the UBS Chief Investment Office. And now, as it mainstreams, however, we do continue to hear questions from investors like you. And in the markets, there is this broad debate on sustainable investing, impact investing, as well as ESG. So to address all of these questions and do some myth busting, which is of course our favorite part, we are producing a 4-part series called You Asked, We Answered. And we're going to cover things like, what is a sustainable company? How do I know if it has any impact? How do I invest? What does performance look like? And the big question is sustainable investing for me as an individual investor? So joining me to answer all of these questions in this 4-part series is no stranger to UBS Trending, Amantia Muhedini, Sustainable Investing Strategist from our Chief Investment Office. Good to see you, Amantia.
Great to see you, Anthony.
Yeah, so as I mentioned in the intro, part 1 of 4 is today, and we're really going to focus today on the idea of impact. And if I'm looking at a particular strategy, is it actually making the impact that I hope it does? Because if I'm investing in sustainable investing, it seems like the point is you want to make sure it's doing something good or something that you believe in or an impact, which I know you're going to talk about. But I wanted to let's do a level set, talk about, especially for those who are watching today who, and I'm speaking for them, by the way. I've done a lot of shows with you. I've read a lot of your reports, but today I'm going to speak on behalf of the folks that don't really know much. So remind us what sustainable investing and impact investing are.
Great, so let's start there. So sustainable investing we think of as a set of investment strategies, or really as an investment philosophy. So it's not product, it's not an asset class, it's an investment philosophy that looks at incorporating sustainability considerations in the investment analysis and using these sustainability considerations as a key driver of instrument selection. In other words, sustainability is one of the key reasons why an investor would be looking to invest in kind of company A versus company B, for example, issuer A versus issuer B. Now, sustainable and impact investing, right? All of these terms, ESG, SRIs,
that's right.
So many acronyms.
Very many, and people's heads explode with them. It's true.
Yes, and we spend a lot of our time thinking about what are the distinctions. So we think of impact investing as slightly distinct from sustainable investing, related, but think of it more of as a subset of sustainable investing, where in sustainable, you're looking at sustainability to help you select the companies or other issues you're investing in. Impact investing, you're doing that, but also you're aiming for measurable, intentional, and verifiable positive social change or positive environmental change. So really, not all sustainable investing have this measurable, verifiable, positive change, and that's okay, and we can talk about that. But we want to be clear about kind of the all-encompassing concepts and the benefits of each approach.
Okay, so let's focus then on, for our audience, what a sustainable company is. If I care about sustainability as an investor, how do I know that I'm investing sustainably?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question, and it's a tough question. So I would say, and maybe you won't like this, the answer depends. So it depends on what you consider sustainable and what's the metric, or what's the dimension that you're using to evaluate a company. So let me give you an example. Firstly, you can look at how a company is running its operations. How is it treating its people? How is it managing its own carbon footprint, emissions, water emissions, for example? How its governance runs and if it's transparent and so forth. So all of these are ways at looking at whether a company is operationally sustainable. So that's one way in which you can do this evaluation. A second distinct and complementary but different way is to look at not just how a company is making stuff, quote unquote, how it's deriving revenue, but what is it that is deriving revenue from? So you could look at companies that are deriving revenue from products and services that are, aligned to, for example, the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And let's say that you really care about water. You think water scarcity is a challenge. You also think there are opportunities in helping address this challenge. Either you can look at companies that have a really good water footprint, so they're efficient in their water use and their operations, or you can look at companies that are providing water purification solutions to the market. And these will mean different things for sustainability for you. Now, what I would say is either or, but really it could be an and. So you could look at both these two sets of investment philosophies, strategies, companies in the same portfolio, or you could look at the same company from both lenses. But this is why, There are no good or bad things. There's few things that are black or white in our world, and it's the same thing to answer the question, what's a sustainable company?
Right. So, I mean, essentially, it sounds like what you're saying is a lot of it has to do with an investor's almost what fits their own objective, which is the benefit and the challenge, I assume, of investing sustainably. So it's almost what matters to you, and then you start looking into companies, looking for, like, use it as an example, their water footprint. So it's about the investor doing a little bit of research on his or her own, correct? Okay, so I want to talk about ratings with you, because anybody who follows the markets knows that there are ratings of every company. There's credit ratings, there's ratings on every facet of what we do when it comes to investing. Are there ratings for sustainable investing companies, which I imagine there are, and how does it actually work? How should we as investors think about using them?
Sure. So, I mean, first I'll say you're so right. It's all about your objectives. We talk about investment objectives here, and sustainability objectives are tied into the investment objectives. And I think we're going to touch more on this question in our next video series here. But to answer your question on ratings more directly, so yes, there are multiple what are called environmental, social, and governance, or ESG ratings out there by credible data providers. We often actually hear clients say, tell me whether the companies I own have a good ESG score or rating.
Right.
And that there's two ways to thinking about this. So firstly, these ratings exist. Data providers go out to all companies, all issuers out there in the world. We're looking at tens of thousands, 12s of thousands. And they look at what are their policies and practices on a variety of sustainability metrics. Sometimes they'll look at something like 500 plus different indicators, different input points. And then they'll roll that up into a single score. Now, these ratings are often helpful if you're looking at a universe of 12,000 issuers and you want a starting point, essentially, to how do you narrow that down. But once you have narrowed it down somewhat, we would argue that ratings are very helpful as a starting point, as an input point, as a way to tell you how am I doing, but they're not an end-all and be-all. So really what's often important is to look not just kind of what's the headline score, how am I doing, but also to look at what are the underlying things. So if water in this example is the thing that drives a business of a company and its financial performance, maybe we should be looking at that more specifically and not just broadly the headline rating. So what we would say about scores is that they're helpful, they exist, we have our own methodologies how to think about them, but they're important to be considered in the broader context of analysis.
So in other words, do your homework.
Yes, or talk to a financial advisor.
There you go, because he or she would really be able to get down to the details with you.
Yes, exactly.
And find out what your objectives are, and then you can have a conversation about where you can invest sustainably.
Yeah, and that's why we're here as well.
Right, exactly. Okay, good. So here's the next question, and this is really about today's focus is, how do I know if sustainable investing makes a difference? Does it make an impact? Because anybody who wants to invest sustainably hopes, I would imagine, that it's going to make the impact of that water scarcity issue that they're concerned about. As again, to really beat our example to death here. But how do I know?
Yeah, well, so we started by saying there's sustainable investing and impact investing as a subset. So the first thing I would say is for the subset of strategies that are impact investing strategies that have this objective, their objective, in addition to financial performance, is also to measure the change that they hope to produce in the world. So how do I know? I mean, looking at these impact strategies, that's where we think that there's true positive change that is additive. What does that mean? It means because of my additional marginal dollars going into this investment strategy, that's why we're seeing this positive change. It's the change is attributed to me as an investor. Companies, all enterprises, have a positive or a negative impact in the world. So what we look for as investors is really this attribution back to me. Now, that's impact. But what about broad sustainable strategies? What's the point, I've been asked sometimes, of investing in a strategy in liquid markets where you cannot really attribute the change that the large company is making in its operations to my marginal dollars? What's the point of even holding that sustainable investment strategy?
That's a very good question.
Right? It's a great question. Also, I would say two things. One, there's a performance and a portfolio construction reason, and we'll come back to that in the next video. But that's an important part of the value proposition here. In terms of sustainability, we would also say for investors who are coming in to these broad sustainable investing strategies that are investing in things like green bonds or companies that are best in class on sustainability, what they're doing is they're having a positive signaling effect to the market. In other words, they're saying, as these assets are growing in strategies that are sustainability focused, companies need to understand that sustainability matters to how they're viewed by investors. And hopefully down the line, this may have a positive impact on their cost of capital, how cheap or expensive it is for them to keep raising assets from the market, raising capital from the market and growing. But even in the near term, we would expect the signaling effect. It's almost like you're part of this rising tide that lifts all boats. And that we think is a benefit from a sustainability perspective, in addition to the financial performance potential benefits.
Exactly. And that's something that I know in the past we've spoken about when we've done various surveys from UBS to clients and investors, where we can see clearly that sustainable investing and impact investing is important to many clients, more than some might even imagine. Because I think a lot of folks out there, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, think sustainable investing and impact investing is a kind of a new concept, but it really has been around for a very long time and has only gotten more popular in conversations and probably through social media and conversations like you're having with many of our advisors and our clients and investors alike. So very interesting stuff. But here's another question for you. How does an investor identify sustainable or impact strategies that are not authentic about sustainability?
Yep.
That's because you gave me the tools on how to look for ones that do invest sustainably and meet my objectives. But what about the ones that don't? How do I identify those?
I mean, that's the challenge, especially as sustainable investing is mainstreaming. And it's difficult to identify those investment strategies that are just looking at sustainability as tools, to use your same word, but where sustainability is not driving instrument selection. What we would say is, it's important to look at what the intent of the investment strategy is and whether it's articulating some sort of sustainability outcomes or objectives as part of it. And it's very important to also look at methodologies to make sure that what your objectives are specifically are aligned broadly, at least, with the methodology, with the approach that whoever that portfolio manager or investment strategy is applying to earn, hopefully, a well-deserved ESG label, but sometimes it's not well-deserved. And so we would say kind of doing your homework, understanding what your priorities are, and then understanding the nuance of all of the ways in which sustainability can come into investment decision-making, and seeing if there's a match and if that match is authentic.
Yeah, and Mantia, thank you. And I know that over the course of the next 3 episodes, we're going to talk about sustainable investing in practice. We're going to talk about performance, because certainly as an investor, that's something that you really want from a strategy, is that it performs well. And also we'll also talk about, is sustainable investing right for me? So those are really good topics. I'm looking forward to chatting about those with you. So thanks for stopping in today.
This is very fun. I look forward to the rest of these conversations.
Yeah, me too. Thanks, Amantia. And for those of you who are watching, make sure to come back for part 2 and 3 and 4, of course, over the next couple of weeks. And Amantia will be sitting with me yet again for those. And for more information on what we've spoken about today, there's a website, ubs.com/sustainable-investing. Lots of content up there from UBS. And make sure to follow us on social media, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and all of our episodes of this show, UBS Trending, are on demand on our website or on the UBS YouTube channel. And as Amantia pointed out, if you have questions about your own portfolio or how you might want to be investing sustainably, talk to a financial advisor. Let them know what your objectives are about how you're investing and what that means to you to be sustainable and in making an impact, and then they'll find the right strategies for you that fit in your portfolio framework. Until next time, I'm Anthony Pastore. We hope you have a great day. Remember to keep your eyes on what's trending. We'll see you soon.